Did you know that more than 90% of you are not subscribed? Let's fix that. Those are rookie numbers. For me, it's been a little while since I've sat down and really recorded a video in which it was just me talking about something, because for the most part it's just been gameplay. I've been playing a lot of game stuff lately, but to be fair, we are sort of keeping on that trend, because today I'm not exactly playing a video game, but I will be talking about video games. Because even though I'm not the greatest of gamers and I don't really play a whole lot of video games in my spare time, it's mainly just with friends or, Master Duel. But growing up, I definitely did play a lot of video games, and the bulk of my YouTube journey, of me first really watching YouTube, started with watching video game content. So I'm gonna be getting a little personal with this video and talking about the games that shaped who I am to this day and continue to shape me for the rest of my life, I guess. This video is inspired by a video that I saw where Jacksepticeye, he did a 3x3 of his top games. And of course it's also inspired by Trash Taste, who does 3x3 stuff all the time and whatnot. Last time I did a 3x3 was the anime 3x3 and the one-off podcast episode I did with my friends. Check that out if you haven't. It's a good video. Alas, here is my 3x3. Now, I wouldn't say that this is my top 9 kind of thing. There's a difference between your top 10 and what your personal top 10 is, some of these I definitely would say can be swapped out with certain ones, but for the most part this is what has shaped me throughout my life, these 9 games here. So going from left to right, 3 we got Halo Reach, Battlefront 2, the 2005 version, Super Mario World on the Game Boy Advance, Subnautica, Shadow of the Colossus, God of War, Doki Doki Literature Club, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. These are in no particular order either. Some of these, obviously, I've talked about a little bit before. Shadow of the Colossus, God of War, and Halo Reach, I've kind of talked about. If you saw my video game music reaction video thing, I talked a good amount about those 3. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, obviously I post gameplay videos occasionally on the channel, and of course I talk about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Was pretty influential in my upbringing as a child. Doki Doki Literature Club, obviously I did a playthrough of Doki Doki Literature Club Plus back in the day. It's up on the channel if you want to watch it. And then the games that I haven't really talked about at all much on the channel are GTA 5, Subnautica, Battlefront, and Super Mario World. Where do I want to start? I guess I'll start with some of the ones that I've already sort of talked about on the channel. So I'll just start with Doki Doki Literature Club. Again, obviously, check out my playthrough of the story. I never finished my playthrough of the side stories. There's a part of me that wants to go back and finish that series just so it's done. I think why I like it so much is just because of how deceptive it is. And I definitely think it pioneered, maybe not pioneered, but it definitely reawoken a new genre in visual novel games, where it's just on the outset it's yeah, this cute whatever visual novel dating sim kind of game, but then the deeper you go into it, it gets really dark and it's just breaking the fourth wall. And seeing that for the first time and actually experiencing it, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Thankfully I got to experience actually playing the game for myself before ever watching anything on it. I saw Mark and Jack and some people started uploading yeah, Doki Doki Literature Club, so that gave me a thing to be okay, maybe I should check it out. And then I played through it. Yeah, thankfully I got to experience that game just as it was, without any spoilers, without any knowledge. So once it got to the act 2, I guess, of the game, the halfway point, I'm gonna try to stay spoiler free on most of these, just because a lot of these games definitely should be experienced with no knowledge. I don't know, it's just one of those games that it still has stuck with me for all these years, because it originally came out in 2017, I think, and it honestly is still, in terms of my top games of all time, it's top 5 at the very least. Obviously it's not really one of those games that you can or should play over and over and over again. I mean, you can to get different Easter eggs and a kind of different ending. For the most part, it's one of those games where it's you play it through the one time, and for the sake of your mental health, you should probably stop after that. But on mental health, I think Doki Doki, it does a good portrayal of different mental disorders. You know what I mean? If you played the game, like, you know, it delves into like anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, like a lot of these different mental disorders, and I think it handles them fairly well, while also all being in the shell of a Japanese style visual novel anime game. And even when I played it again for the channel a couple years ago, even though I knew the twists and turns that was coming in the story, it was still really fun to play. You know, even though that series obviously hasn't aged the best in terms of quality or anything, I still think it's a pretty good series overall. Like, obviously I wouldn't say it's the version you should watch. Like, I definitely recommend like Markiplier's or Jacksepticeye's playthrough of it. Like, both of those are really good. I just think I did a pretty decent and good job of covering the game, and just, you know, I obviously don't spoil shit like right away. Like, I talk about, like, obviously I do hint at the thing. It's just like, yeah, this game is not what it seems, but just in terms of characters, design, gameplay, even though it's mainly just point and click, it's a story that will always stick with me, and I really hope one day we see like an anime adaptation of this. I know there's some where it's like, yeah, there's some anime that are like similar to Doki Doki in a way, but like, no, I want like a one-for-one adaptation of Doki Doki Literature Club. I think that'd be really good. And I think it would work better if it's like a POV style, because I've seen some of those like that, not like hentai or anything, but like anime where it's similar to that. That's enough on Doki Doki. It's earned its place still as one of my tops of all time, and I really hope that there's more that comes from it eventually. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, obviously I've talked a lot about Master Duel over the course of the last year or so, posting stuff on the channel, the many different decks I've made, of course Yu-Gi-Oh! Being one of the things that I was raised on as a child, not the anime, just playing the card game. But of course, much like with Dragon Ball, like I watched it a lot and, you know, played Yu-Gi-Oh! As a child, and then there was a big gap in my life, like pretty much from like early elementary school to like start of high school. Like I wasn't watching anything Dragon Ball and I wasn't playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But then now going into more of my adulthood, like that spark and love for those things has reawakened. Like Dragon Ball, obviously that happened a lot sooner, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Has happened more recently, thanks to Master Duel and obviously YouTubers like Syriax, Team Samurai, and those guys. My love and passion for Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been reignited and burned even brighter than when I was a child, where I just was barely understanding and comprehending the game, but I did enjoy it. And again, now thanks to Master Duel, I have completely fallen in love with the game. As much pain and strain as it causes my health and mind, I still boot it up and play it every day, you know, logging in, doing daily missions, participating in tournaments, and whatever's going on in the game. I build the decks I want to build. Like, yeah, I don't keep up to date completely with like the metas or anything. Like, I just play the decks I want to play. It's motivated me to play some actual TCG matches. I haven't done too many. I've only done like a couple like local matches, and I for the most part get swept just because I'm playing shit like Cubic or B-Trooper in real life. And that's just what I love about Master Duel. It's like it allows me to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Without making too much of financial investments. The game's very beautiful, you know, card animations are always nice to look at, and playing it for the channel is obviously really fun. Like, those videos end up being some of my favorite to edit and rewatch, especially the Wheel of Yu-Gi-Oh! The randomizer that I did recently. Like, that has become my personal favorite Master Duel video I've ever done. I've talked enough about Master Duel. It's really fun. It's obviously a game I wouldn't exactly recommend to the average viewer, because it's more or less, it's like, if you're not already into Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're not gonna know what's going on, and you're gonna be consumed by the toxic meta, and you'll never want to play again. I'm gonna go to some of the lesser talked about ones. I'll go to Super Mario World for the Game Boy Advance. Even though I've grown up in the age where Game Boy was more or less being phased out, I mean, very much was. By the time I was growing up, we were already getting like Xbox 360s and stuff like that, and even like Nintendo DS's, like in terms of like on-the-go gaming stuff. I don't remember too much, but at one point I was getting a lot of my brother's hand-me-downs, because my brother, me and him are about like 10 years apart in age, so obviously he grew up in like the 90s, you know, having Game Boys, GameCubes, Game Boy Colors and whatnot. So like I would get his Game Boy Color and I would play Pokemon. I don't remember what Pokemon it was, but the one that always stuck with me, and the one that I do still come back to from time to time, is Super Mario World Advance 2 for the Game Boy Advance. And believe it or not, I still have it. This absolute relic right here has stuck with me and stayed with me pretty much my entire life. For those of you who grew up with the Game Boy, here's a nostalgic sound for you. I mean, obviously these things are very outdated, and obviously like you can, when you boot it up, you can barely like see it because there was no backlighting on these things. So you had to get like the lamp. I mean, I never had like the plug-in lamp thing or anything, but I'm legit like playing it right now. This is why it's on this list, because every once in a while I get like a specific kind of board, because it's just literally sitting here in this drawer right here. Like, you know, just sitting here with like on Yoshi's Island. I would just like speed run like Yoshi's Island and then like a little bit of the Donut Plains 1. You know what's funny? The power light isn't on. Normally it flashes red when it's like, oh, you need to change the batteries. But I don't think I've changed the batteries in at least 5 years, and well, it's still working. See, that's what I honestly love about like old like on the go like console things. These things were just like absolute industrial grade Nokia level of devices. The batteries by all means should be completely drained and dead by this point, but this thing's still going. Whereas nowadays, like something like this that obviously isn't even battery powered, like you plug it in to charge it, it doesn't even get down all the way and it's already starting to like run like shit. Whereas this runs perfectly fine. Again, I have a very specific nostalgia for that Super Mario game because, you know, I'd be on the go. Like, that thing has gone so many places with me, and it's kind of funny considering that it's like, you know, going to school and whatnot growing up in the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's like, by all means, I was a 90s kid growing up in the 2000s. It's just a fun little thing that every once in a while, to this day, I still bust out and play with. The Game Boy was a simpler time. But speaking of simpler time, Star Wars Battlefront 2 2005. Don't get me wrong, this absolutely is a guilty pleasure of a game for me, because holy shit, this game is so ass, but I love it so much. I'm so glad that it's still backwards compatible to this day on everything, because I still slip it into my Xbox One every once in a while and I play it, and it's like, god damn it. Modern day Battlefront 2 could never ever live up to this. Playing the Galactic Conquest, the different like space battles, like flying into the Separatist ship, blowing up all their stuff on the inside. I remember vividly like playing Separatist on Kashyyyk, going to that one laser turret, then just like just shooting everything in sight. I would always play against bots though, and every once in a while I'd play heroes versus villains and just having a clusterfuck of like 1,000 different bots all playing different characters like on Coruscant and whatnot. Just the different sound effects, the character lines. This is just like the simulation. It's not really too much to talk about with it. It's just, again, growing up early, just having the weirdest kind of fun with it. I would never play it for long because like you do get bored of it fairly quickly. I play it for like at most maybe an hour, but going off of stuff that I play for like an hour or so at a time and then get off and do something else, GTA 5. I'm not talking about GTA Online. I'm talking about Grand Theft Auto Story Mode, because GTA Online is fun if you have friends. Just mainly doing heists and one-off missions just with your friends. Like, not just getting into a random lobby and then getting smoked by people who have nukes at the tips of their fingers. Still to this day, what I do if I'm feeling kind of stressed or just like whatever, I just want to play a game but I don't really want to play something new, I boot up GTA 5, go into story mode, play only as Trevor, because I love Stephen Ogg, and just put in cheat codes, like invincibility and super jump and ammo, and just go ham. I think why I just love GTA so much is because it's a very specific kind of open world. It's just because it's so similar to real life, just in terms of just like obviously Los Santos is modeled after Los Angeles, and of course me living fairly close to LA, going to LA and like seeing stuff, it's always funny just driving downtown and being like, hey, I've crashed into that building before, or hey, I've robbed that bank, or I've landed a helicopter on top of that building. But outside of everything, like the story mode, I've played GTA story mode like over and over again, like at least like 6 or 7 or 8 times, just because I think the story is really fun. Definitely not something I should have been playing the age I was, but obviously you could call me a psychopath or whatever, you know, just like shooting shit. But I mean, just talking about the story mode, it's like, you know, Michael, Franklin, Trevor, they're very iconic and fun characters to play. And even the story mode, just doing the different like heist missions and drug runs, it's a world that I love diving into. And whenever GTA 6 finally happens, I mean, who knows, because GTA 5 has been out for 10 years now. I mean, that's also just another thing. This game came out still in the era of Xbox 360 and PS3. So whenever GTA 6 comes out, whatever they do with it, it's gonna be nuts, I'm sure. Now we're gonna talk about, like, the final 4. What I truly consider, like, my be-all, end-all, my top of tops in terms of video games. And I'm gonna go in reverse order of what is my top. So number 4. Halo Reach, baby. Still my favorite Halo game of all time. I'm sure if you do a consensus, a sizable majority of Halo fans would probably say Reach is their favorite. I've played every Halo game. Like, obviously, growing up, like, I didn't, like, play them all in order. Like, I'm pretty sure I started with Reach, which, to be fair, technically is the first game, because it's a prequel to Master Chief and all that. Just story mode, man. Story, like, at the end of the day, like, I'm one of those people that's just, like, gameplay can be whatever it is. If the story's good and the world is great, I'm in. Because I know some people, it's just like, the story could be whatever, just so long as the game is really fun. I'm the opposite, honestly. Gameplay can be whatever. If the story is, like, just phenomenal and hooking, I will fall in love with it. Because at the end of the day, I'm a story person. Like, I love writing stories. I love experiencing stories in every medium. And Halo Reach, I think, definitely sparked that for me as a child. Like, just the Halo Reach story, like, immediately jumping in with Noble Team, your Noble 6, just being able to customize your armor, just, like, make your own Spartan, just experiencing the fall, the glassing of Reach. Because back then, it's like, I didn't know really the story of Halo. Like, I knew, like, Master Chief or whatever, but jumping into this game, I was just like, who are these characters? I didn't really understand also the concept, really, of a prequel. This game came out after all these games, but it takes place before. Like, obviously I understood that with, like, Star Wars, with, like, the prequels and whatnot, but, like, just going through this game and then just, like, each of the Noble Team members getting picked off one by one, except for June. You know, dying's gay, I'm out. It's a weirdly emotional game for me, and it's one of the games definitely I want to revisit and play on the channel. Because it's been a good couple years since I've played, or more than a couple, it's been like probably closer to a decade since I've played the campaign for myself. Of course, it spawned the classic meme of objective survive, and then of course, story mode aside, multiplayer. It was one of the first proper, like, big online multiplayer games I ever played. The thing I have the most nostalgia for, obviously, is playing Griffball, which is a game where you have gravity hammers and energy swords, and your objective is pretty much just get this bomb and take it to the other side. It's in a very small arena, but since gravity hammers are one-shot kills, it leads to a lot of very toxic and funny memories, especially since team kill was always on, so it just led to people just getting angry and killing their own teammates. And then of course, like, classic modes where, like, you take the warthog down the giant chasm and then, like, it teleports you back, and it just leads to this big glitching mess where you're just falling and exploding and everything. It's Reach and Minecraft that, like, I more or less played around the same time. Definitely shaped who I was as a kid. It was very fun. Loved the story, loved the characters, loved the gameplay. Halo Reach, still my favorite Halo game to date. Now then, number 3, Subnautica. I've talked a little bit about Subnautica. I think the most I ever talked about it was in my video games tier list video, which I don't recommend watching that video because it's ass, but I'll talk more about it here now. Subnautica, another one of those games I definitely want to visit and play on the channel. I talked about in that video that Subnautica is kind of one of those games where, like, I need to play it like once a year kind of thing, even though I haven't played it in the last couple years. It's such a captivating... Subnautica and Shadow of the Colossus I have similar praises for, in that there is lore to the world, but if you're not really looking for it or reading it, you're not gonna know anything. But at the same time, you can kind of infer based on what's said by the characters, or in Subnautica's case, by the PDA system, where it's like, even if you're not stopping and reading the lore that you collect, you can more or less understand what happened. One of my favorite instances of that in Subnautica is the collapse of the research facility, which is like the big, like, cube thing that you find when you go into the Lost River. It's where, like, you get the animation of, like, the Kara really infecting you. I think the PDA says, like, this research facility is where they were researching, like, Sea Emperor stuff and, like, the Sea Dragon Leviathan eggs. And I talked about in the PDA, it's like the reason the facility fell is because it was attacked by a mother sea dragon, because the eggs were being kept in that facility, and so it attacked it and, like, destroyed it, and then the mother died because, like, it suffered, like, heavy head trauma. And then you find that skeleton just outside the research facility, and, like, on the PDA it says, like, oh, it has, like, yeah, a cracked skull, and, like, it looked like it suffered heavy head trauma. But if you don't read that, you don't know that. All you do is you find this, like, destroyed facility, and it's like, huh, they were researching this thing here, and that's it. I'm pretty sure, like, even in the PDA itself, it doesn't really specifically say that the skeleton that you find outside is that sea dragon. Like, you just put 2 and 2 together with it being like, oh, this was destroyed by a sea dragon. This sea dragon has head trauma. And it's like, oh, That's really cool. Or even the big tree that you find is a ghost Leviathan egg. Like, there's a lot of little things in the game. It's just mainly because you play as a silent protagonist. That's why I love the main game Subnautica, but Below Zero I don't. Just because Subnautica works because it's a silent protagonist. And that's what makes it more terrifying, especially when you're playing the game for the first time. Because like you don't have that comfort of like knowing that your character is also afraid. It's just you. And that's just what's so magical about the world of Subnautica. Magical and terrifying. It's one of those games where I wish I could just take my memories of it away and play it again for the first time, because it is just a masterpiece of gaming. Or maybe not of gaming, but definitely of like ambiance and lighting, sound design, and just horror. You could just look up constant compilations of people discovering Leviathans, like seeing the Reaper Leviathan for the first time or seeing the Ghost Leviathan. I could play the game on the channel, but I could probably get it done in like a couple hours, because it's like I know exactly the places to go, I know where resources are, like I pretty much know the whole map. It's a very fun game, but it can be spedrun. That's why I wish I could take my memories away from it, just because it's like I wouldn't be taking my time with the game, just because I know exactly where to go, like where to get certain upgrades. But overall, just the story of Subnautica, it's one of my favorites. And of course I was exposed to it the first time by, you know, people like Markiplier and Jack, you know, watching their playthroughs of it and then eventually playing it for myself. And just every single time, like I've played through the story, doing different worlds, like different playthroughs, different difficulties, getting to that point where you build the rocket, you get in, take off, and it's like 3, 2, 1, and the music cuts. Dun, dun, dun. I always can't help but tear up every time. I don't even know why. Like, I can't explain it. It's not really an emotional story. It's like you're just this guy who survived a crash of this cruise ship and he's just trying to get off the planet, and then through that you discover, like, you know, the Sea Emperor, and just like you bring life back to the planet, you get rid of the Kara. But I just can't help but get teary-eyed every time I finally take off and leave. I don't know, it's just a really fun game, and I can't wait to one day finally play it on the channel and then like talk more about it, because it's just one of the best games ever for me. Number 2, God of War. Now, I have God of War 2018 on here, but this encompasses like the entirety of the God of War series. God of War 1, 2, 3, 2018, Ragnarok. I've thought about it recently. Still my favorite God of War game is still God of War 3, just because of the scope and scale, literally Kratos going through and killing the entire Greek pantheon. 2018 is a very close second though, just because that game was just masterful in everything that it did. But just looking at the original trilogy of God of War 1, 2, 3, like if you just had those games on their own, it's hard to say that it would still be in my top 3 of all time. Like I would say top 10, but I think because you go through this such stark change of going from God of War 3 to God of War 2018, God of War 4, where it's like not only is it like so many years later, not only do you go through character change, you go through gameplay change, the entire overhaul of this series, and it's a whole new story going into 2018 and Ragnarok. I mean, obviously because it's a whole new mythology, you're going from Greek to Norse, but it's just seeing the journey of Kratos' character. The original trilogy, like all he's doing is just revenge. Kills Ares, then he goes and kills the Sisters of Fate, kills Hades, kills Poseidon, he kills Hercules, he kills Zeus, gets to that point, and then it's like he finally has his revenge, and then he stops and looks and realizes the destruction he's caused. Pretty much the entire continent at the time of Greece was just wiped off the face of the earth because of his actions. And so he leaves and then goes into Norse mythology, and now he's trying, it's like obviously he's still the God of War deep down, but I mean it's shown right away when he fights Baldur. It's like he's not immediately like, all right, you're coming to me, I'm gonna kill you. He gives him several chances, like, you shouldn't be here, just leave my home, this is your last chance, and then he fights him. It's just so many things with God of War. It's like the characters, the gameplay, the music, the everything. It's just a phenomenal series through and through. Unfortunately though, out of all the games on this list, I still have yet to ever play God of War for myself. And the first time I ever experienced God of War was one of my favorite YouTubers, Syriax. He did a playthrough of God of War 3 in anticipation for 2018, and I was like, holy shit, this is an amazing series. So I went back and watched stuff on God of War 1, 2, and I watched his playthrough of 2018 and just watched everything, and I'm just like, holy shit, this series is phenomenal. How have I never given this the light of day? One day, hopefully, I know that there's the PC version of 2018, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. One day I will get a PS5 or PS whatever by the time I actually get it, and I will play through the entire God of War series on the channel, maybe, who knows. But yeah, it definitely earns that number 2 spot, just the God of War series as a whole. It's like, yeah, I have gripes and stuff with Ragnarok, but At the end of the day, that game was also still phenomenal as well. Now then, the final game. Shadow of the Colossus. Now, until very recently, I also have never played this game for myself, but I still referred to it as my favorite game of all time. That is just mainly because of Jacksepticeye's playthrough of Shadow of the Colossus. Until about like a couple months ago, I have never played the game for myself, but I have to give a big shout out to one of my very good friends, Jesh, who you've seen in a couple videos. Funny story, like on the night of the Super Bowl, he invited me over to his house and we were doing stuff and he was like, oh yeah, I just downloaded Shadow of the Colossus. You want to play it? And I'm like, And pretty much for the entire night, I went through and just played the entire game of Shadow of the Colossus and beat it. You know, going all the way from the first Colossus Valus to the end with Malice. And I gotta say, like, as I was kind of worried, because again, I've never played the game for myself before, so there is kind of like that like hidden magic, I guess, of just like I'll never know what it's like to really play it. But then like actually having the game and playing it, I fell even more in love with Shadow of the Colossus. Like obviously at first it took a couple tries to really get the controls down. Because at the end of the day, one of the biggest downsides of Shadow of the Colossus is that the controls are very jank. Or I wouldn't say jank, they're just very bizarre. It was very fun though. Like once I finally gotten like the rhythm, it was around like Colossus 6 and 7 that I finally was like, alright, I've got the controls down. The bulk of the struggle was just like getting the controls down, but like I already knew like how to defeat each Colossus, so like I didn't have to worry about that just because, you know, again, I've watched playthroughs countless of times. I've seen the story and everything, so it's like I knew what to do for each puzzle to defeat each Colossus. But yeah, just getting to play it for the first time, like actually, it's like hearing a story versus actually being there to experience the story. I've praised Shadow of the Colossus so much. I mean, again, favorite game of all time. It's just amazing music, action, graphics. Well, obviously I praise the graphics now with the remastered version, but even then it's like some of those graphic engines now are kind of outdated because the remaster came out in 2016, I believe. 2016, 2017, around that time. It's like I now look at Jack's playthrough of the game like so differently now because now I've actually played the game. So it's like I understand like the struggles he has when like he falls or like doesn't have enough grip or like some jank stuff happens. I'm like, I've been there. It's weird to be like, oh yeah, the story of Shadow of the Colossus, because it's like, what story? I mean, there is story, obviously. Like, you know, Wander takes his lover, sister, Discord kitten, who's dead, to this temple, and it's like, alright, you must defeat these 16 Colossus, and then Dorman's like, yeah, I'll give you what you want. I give her back at a price. And that's the game, is you have 16 boss fights, and you have this massive open world that has nothing in it. Who, like, a game like this wouldn't get made nowadays. Like, imagine that being like, hey, I have this amazing idea. A world in which you have these massive boss fights that are also like the stage, like the arena, like you climb up them. It's like, all right, do you need specific arenas? Like, it's like, no, it's gonna be in an open world, but you don't need to explore any of it. And it's like, huh? To be fair, like in like Rockstar games like GTA or Red Dead, it's like you technically don't need to explore those worlds either, because like you could sort of just like do mission and just go where you need to go. I mean, but even still in those games, like even if you explore the world, like you can get random encounters and whatnot and do random missions that you would never have known were there unless you were exploring the world. Whereas with Shadow of the Colossus, the most you get is that you find a temple, which is a save point, or you find another lizard that you can chop the tail off and get some more grip meter, or some fruit that can increase health. I mean, but if you do explore the world, you do find some like pretty cool scenery, which is like obviously good grounds for like, you know, using photo mode and doing stuff. It's just so fascinating because like it's a world where like none of it is really explained. Like, yeah, there's an opening narration where it's like, oh yes, the land of Deadland or whatever. It's like there's nothing there, the cursed land. Like obviously, yeah, it ties into the world of like Eco and Last Guardian, and it's like it's a prequel to all that. But I don't know, it's just very fun. Just the music's iconic as hell. The bosses, like, obviously, I know all of them by name. To this day, it still remains one of my favorite games of all time. Well, I say one of. It is my favorite game of all time, period. And definitely, again, much like with a lot of these, once I eventually get a PlayStation of my own, I will definitely do my own playthrough of Shadow of the Colossus. Either way, this was my 3x3 of my favorite games of all time. Well, not necessarily some of my favorites, but like, just, you know, games that have shaped who I am. I would exchange either Battlefront 2 or like Super Mario World for like Minecraft. The honorable mention, the 10th place, Minecraft. Just because that also shaped a lot of who I was, you know, watching Minecraft YouTube content, which nowadays, Yeah. And also just playing the game with friends and whatnot, you know. It's like everyone played Minecraft if they were growing up in the early 2010s, late 2000s. These are all my games in the 3x3. I've made other 3x3s of like TV shows, movies, and of course anime and whatnot that I definitely would want to make other videos on in the future. I think this is fun. Like, you guys get to see like who I am, who Lancer really is, like the games that truly encapsulated and made who I am. Feel free to make your own 3x3s. I used the website Capwing. It's pretty fun. Like, you just put images in and, you know, download it, and then yeah, here you go, 3x3. Or you could just do it in Photoshop, like whatever you want to do. Join me for many other videos like this in the future, other 3x3s, discussions, gameplays, anything that I plan to post in the future. So until next time, I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.